بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
Assalamu alaikum. It is Thursday, the 25th of November 2021, and in our series Reflections on the Holy Quran, this is broadcast number 280. And we are looking at the meanings of the words of chapter 2, verse 96 of the Holy Quran. And this is the second broadcast in that you may call sub-series. Just to remind you that these broadcasts are brought to you by the Lahore Ahmadiyya community, which was founded by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian. And he taught members of this Jamaat that although generally Muslims want to bring another prophet after the Holy Prophet Muhammad, this cannot happen because the Holy Quran says that the Holy Prophet was Khatamun Nabiyyin, and the Holy Prophet explained that by saying that it means La Nabi Abadi. There is no prophet after me. So now no prophet is going to come, whether an old one or a new one. However, the Holy Prophet said in Hadith that when the Ummah needs guidance, then reformers, Mujaddideen, will come. And of course, because they will try and reform Muslims' beliefs and their actions and so on, this will lead to disagreement. But the Holy Prophet said, and this is a fundamental principle of Islam, that if one reciter of the kalima says to another reciter of the kalima that you're a heretic, it is the person saying it who's closer to heresy. In other words, Muslims should not call each other kafirs. No one has the right to judge another person. And Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad also taught that Muslims believe that part of the prophetic revelation that the Holy Prophet received is missing from the Holy Quran, such as Ayah Rajam and Surah Walayat and so on. But he said that this is wrong, because in the Holy Quran, God has promised that He is the guardian of the Holy Quran. So none of His revelations could have been missed out. Similarly, he said that people say that some verses of the Holy Quran are abrogated. This is not possible. How can it be? And Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad taught that no verse of the Holy Quran was, is, or ever shall be abrogated. And these things are very important because if you are talking to Christians and so on, these questions frequently arise. For example, when Muslims put forward La ikraha fi din, there is no compulsion in religion. Christians say, well, yes, fine, but this verse has been abrogated by later verses of the Holy Quran. And they point out that this is not their theory. This is what Muslims themselves say. And they're not talking about you and me. They're talking about illustrious scholars of the Holy Quran who've said this. But Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad taught that no verse of the Holy Quran was, is, or ever shall be abrogated. And most importantly, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad said that jihad is a fundamental duty of every Muslim. But jihad as defined by the Holy Prophet Muhammad, not as defined by Tom, Dick, or Harry. You can't have everyone with their own definition of a jihad and then claiming and blaming others in saying that, they've abrogated jihad or they don't follow jihad and so on. The Holy Prophet's definition of jihad was given when he was returning from a battle, and he said that Muslims were returning from the minor jihad towards the major jihad, which he explained was a struggle to control your own inner desires, your own self, your inner self. So with that, let's go to today's topic. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وَلَتَجِدَنَّهُمْ أَحْرَصَ النَّاسِ عَلَى حَيَاةٍ وَمِنَ الَّذِينَ أَشْرَكُوا يَوَدُّ أَحَدُهُمْ لَوْ يُعَمَّرُ أَلْفَ سَنَةٍ وَمَا هُوَ بِمُزَحْزِحٍ وما هو بمزحزحه من العذاب أن يعمر والله بصير بما يعملون. And you will certainly find them the greediest of men for life, greedier even than those who set up gods besides Allah. One of them loves to be granted a life of 1,000 years, and his being granted a long life will in no way remove him further off from the chastisement. And Allah is seer of what you do. Sorry about that. I got tongue-tied with two ha's, if you see what I mean. So, the two words we are going to look at are An-Nas. Allah is a connecting word, and the next word is, where are we? Hayat. So let's go to my notes on my laptop and see what we can find out. There is some disagreement, dispute, whatever you want to call it, about the root of this word annas, but the dictionary I use says that noon va seen is the triliteral root, and in this form the word is used in the Holy Quran 241 times. It's used from the very beginning. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يَقُولُ آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَبِالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَمَا هُمْ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ. This is chapter 2, verse 8. So, meaning the people. And again, Ya Yohannasu Budu Rabbakum Allazi Khalaqakum, which is again Al-Baqarah, verse 21. And again, Baquduhan Nasu, which is again a few verses down, verse 24. And from beginning right to the end, the last verse, the last chapter of the Holy Quran, 114. They look at that. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ مَلِكِ النَّاسِ إِلَٰهِ النَّاسِ الَّذِي يُوَسْوِسُ فِي صُدُورِ النَّاسِ مِنَ الْجِنَّةِ وَالنَّاسِ. And it ends with that, meaning men. So, as I said, there is some disagreement. Some people say that its basis, foundation is unasun, and the first Hamza was replaced by Lam, so it became Annas, and so on. And it means, as I said in English translation, that various verses that I read out, people, like قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ, say, announce, tell people that I seek refuge in the Rabb, in the Creator of people. Rabbin Nas. And here, the whole of humanity is meant. Humanity, whether in the past or present or future, because Allah, God, has created human beings and He continues to create them. But it can also apply to a group of people with a particular attribute. Aminu kama amanannas, chapter 2, verse 13. And in the same way, others believed. You too believe. Now, here We are talking about not the whole of humanity, but out of humanity, those people who possessed a particular attribute. And that was that they had the qualities that made them recognize the truth, and they accepted the truth. Because it may be that you recognize the truth, but you don't accept it. In the same way, in chapter 4, verse 54, it says, Yah sudunan nasa alama atahumullahu min fadli. And what Allah has granted, bestowed upon some people, they're jealous of it. So these people are not jealous of the whole humanity, not everyone, but people who've been granted certain things, God's blessings. And that blessing can be anything, really. People generally assume that God's blessings actually mean money and promotion and all this kind of thing, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. What is God's blessing for one person? Another person will just sort of, take it for granted and not pay much attention to it. For example, one blessing of God is that He may listen to your prayers. And there are such people. Hazrat Maulana Abdul Haq Vidyarthi Rahmatullah was one such person, and people from far and wide used to go to him and ask him to pray for them. Now, that is a great blessing of God, that He listens to the prayers. And and so on. And others are jealous of that. There are people to whom God speaks. And again, Hazrat Maulana was one of those people. And we've seen in our Jamaat, Hazrat Maulana Muhammad Ali, Hazrat Maulana Abdul Haq Vidyarthi, and of course the founder, Hazrat Masih Maud, the promised Messiah. God spoke to him. And that is a great blessing. But people were jealous of that. What does he say? God speaks to him. So, the next word, its root is ha, ya, ya. And that occurs in the Holy Quran 184 times and in 12 different forms. 76 times as hayat, 51 times as ahya, 24 times as hayy, and so on. 9 times as yastahyi, and 7 times as hayya. And then fewer occurrences, 6 times as tahiyyat, etc. So that means life. But then, what is life? one condition of life? Well, biology has certain conditions of life, but biology deals with this world where we are now. What happens after we die or move on, whatever you want to call it, is not biology's subject. So it says, for example, well, a living thing needs nutrition. So human beings need food, animals need food, um, plants need food. This is why you water them, you give them fertilizer and all this kind of thing. But then I could turn around and say, well, a car needs fuel, so that must be alive. And then, so you add another extra condition that something living has to fulfill. So we say, well, it excretes waste matter, like human beings and animals and so on and so forth. And then you say, oh, I could say, well, car does that as well. It has a waste pipe from which all the waste gases are sort of excreted. So what about that? So you add another condition. It grows, the condition here. So if I buy a small car, it's not going to grow and become a Rolls Royce in 10 years' time. It will remain the same size. Another condition of living organisms is that they do something to keep their species going. Now, a cow can't do that. You use it for as long as you can, and then it sort of craps out and dies. And that is fine if you're going to limit life to this world. But Muslims have tried to coin a definition of life that includes this life and the hereafter. And of course, they've included God in that. God is Hayyul Qayyum. He doesn't die. He doesn't need food. He doesn't excrete waste. He doesn't need to procreate to carry on his species. Everything that biology says is a sign of life. God does not need or does not have. He doesn't eat, doesn't expel waste, doesn't procreate. By procreation, we mean a species doing something to carry on its existence. I mean, God is only one. He doesn't have a mechanism by which he creates another God, and so on. So Imam Raghib had some conditions, and one is, and some of them are similar to the conditions that biology has put on. The definition of living things, like the ability to grow, which, as I said, Plants do that, animals do that. And when I say animals, I include human beings in that, scientifically speaking. And you see, in one form of life, a condition of life is freedom from sorrow and worry and depression. Now, that doesn't necessarily happen in this world. It does with many people, or with some people. But this is going to be a significant part of the life in the hereafter, that you won't have to worry about anything. So, and then, the ability to have intellect and the ability to act. And you might say, well, what about animals and so on? Do they have intellect? Do they have the ability to act and so on? But look at the animal world. In Africa, you have herds of animals like lions and elephants and whatever have you. And when water dries up in one area, they realize this and they move on. They go to a different area. And of course, the Holy Prophet himself said that animals have feelings and intellect and so on, because someone was slaughtering an animal and others of the same species were watching. And the Holy Prophet was very angry. He said, look, do you think that those watching don't feel anything? That one of their species is being killed and slaughtered, and is in pain? The Holy Prophet himself recognized that animals have this ability. What about the honeybee? To give you one example, when they're going to relocate their beehive, they send out scouts in all directions to reconnaissance the land and the possibilities and the availability of food. And then all the scouts come back. And would you believe it, that honeybees actually have something like a parliament to which the scouts report their findings? And they've actually videoed this, that some of them get very excited. A scout comes back convinced that if you go east or wherever, there are plenty of flowers and this and that, and a safe place to have a beehive and so on. And some other scout is disagreeing with that. You actually see them getting excited in more or less the same way as human beings get excited, when they're discussing something and they can't convince the other side of what they're saying. Now, don't you need intellect and emotion to be able to react in this way? That I'm convinced that if we go east, that's best for us and no one's listening to me and so on. So we need to study the animal kingdom with a very open mind. Human beings are very arrogant. They think, they know everything, and, they're so intellectual and this and that and so on. And no one can teach them anything. Someone did an experiment. They noticed that ants move in one line. and at a steady pace. An ant doesn't try to overtake another ant and push in and what have you. So what they tried to do was, these people, they did an experiment. They had one group of cars and they said, drive normally. And that is speed up, overtake, cut in, etc. And to the other group of cars, they said, right, you are going to drive behind one another at a steady speed, whatever the speed was. I don't know, I can't remember. And let's see what happens. And that group where cars drove behind one another at a steady speed without trying to overtake each other and cut in and so on, they got to the destination first and it was safer driving. Whereas those who are trying to cut in and speed up and slow down and overtake and do this and do that and so on, they got to their destination after the other group. And these scientists, they realized this simply by observing this life form called ants. So, when we talk about intellect and so on, let's not be too arrogant about it. Let's not be too arrogant, because there are other living things who have great intellect as well. I see we've slightly run over our time, so I wanted to recite some verses of the Holy Quran, but I'll take my leave of you now with the prayer that whoever you are, wherever you are, may Allah keep you safe and sound and free from harm. Just to remind you that tomorrow at 1300 hours UK time, we will broadcast our Friday sermon, which is in English. On Saturday at 1300 hours, there'll be a broadcast on the WhatsApp group called Pure Discussions, in which the topic is Ahmad and Ghulam of Ahmad, and the servant of Ahmad. Ahmad was one of the names of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Ghulam Ahmad was the name of the promised Messiah. So, and then of course after that are these broadcasts on hopefully Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. With that, I take my leave of you. Assalamu alaikum, Khuda Hafiz, and goodbye.